Good evening. I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. The President of the United States visiting Boston, speaking dramatically of the bravery of the city and that there will be another marathon. He will attend it. The race will go on. Full stop. The manhunt begins. Late this afternoon, East Coast time in the United States, the FBI revealing video and still photos from the video of two men, suspect number one, suspect number two. You can go to the FBI website. Unknown suspect number two wearing a white cap turned around like a rally cap. Unknown suspect number one wearing a black cap and what looks to be dark glasses. Both men walking quickly down the avenue where the race was being held. This is Boylston and Gloucester Street in Boston, Massachusetts. Wearing backpacks. One man, number one, had the backpack on both shoulders. The second man with the backpack slung over his one right shoulder. There are very, very many questions to answer. We will address all of the questions tonight, no answers. I turn immediately to my colleague and co-host, Malcolm Hoenlein, who joins me here for the beginning of the show, because Malcolm is very accustomed to the threat of bombing. He's dealt with it for years. The state of Israel has been under the kind of threat that Boston's lived through these last days after the event. Malcolm, a very good evening to you.
Good evening.
The events in Boston, they're reminding me immediately, all these years we've reported about the threat to Israel and also the threat to the United States. You can speak of both very articulately. Let's start in the state of Israel, the bomb and the mass casualties. My information from you is that it was an Israeli education in Boston that made it possible for them to deal with this number of casualties so quickly. What preparation?
Well, these are the words of the doctors at Mass General who have said that a team 2 years ago of Israeli doctors, but specialists in dealing with mass casualty situation, which unfortunately Israel is very experienced in handling and has learned a lot of lessons about how you deal with such situations and how you deal with triage when you have so many people, as in this case, who needed immediate attention. And they credited the training that they had received 2 years ago, that they were able, that facilitated the treatment, the way they handled it, and everybody has been praising, even those who had questions about other aspects of the aftermath, have been praising the way the doctors handled it. And I thought it was interesting that he noted it. Today I happened to see the police chief of Israel, who told me that he spent the day with Mr. Kelly, the commissioner here in New York, and how they exchange information and how they work together. And I would say one thing, as horrific as the pictures are, you cannot understand and you can't get a real feeling for this unless you see it firsthand. And I was once at a meeting of the conference in Jerusalem, and we walked out after hearing an explosion, and I came to the line at the top of the hill, and it was a distance down the hill where we saw the bus that had exploded. And a young colonel came to me in the crowd, and he said to me, "You have to come down." And I said, No, I don't want to. And he said, "No, you have to." And he took me down to see this bus, and the power, the devastation, that you look down at your feet, and there was a gas station there, and you could see organs laying on top of the pumps, and on the side they had already removed the bodies, or most of the bodies, and were laying them on the street, and all you could see were their shoes, and you saw men's shoes and women's shoes, you saw big shoes and little children's shoes. And you think of every family, everybody who's affected by it, and the horror, and that's why the reluctance to call this an act of terror. It's not a political statement. It's terror. It's meant to intimidate. It's meant to coerce. It's meant to silence us. It's meant to cause fear and hopelessness. And we have to identify it for what it is and confront it for what it is. And therefore, the declaration of this as an act of terror, even if it's not, and we're not associating with any other cause, we don't know who's behind it yet, we don't know whether it's foreign or not, it's still terrorism. And the horror of terrorism, the horrific nature of it, is exactly what these evil people intend to impose. And when Prime Minister Netanyahu issued a very meaningful statement. He said, in events like this, we are one family, we in the United States, and we stand together with them. And everybody in Israel relates to it. And I know the embassy noted that even though it was Israel Independence Day, we were bombarded by calls and expressions of solidarity.
You mentioned Commissioner Kelly in New York. These years since the original attack on New York in 2001, Commissioner Kelly has turned the NYPD into a very hard target with a lot of intelligence gathering. Hence the cooperation with the police chief of Israel. The reason that's important, of course, is because New York is the number one target. We're aware of that, and we watch it very carefully. Intelligence gathering is everything. In this instance, there has been no indication that there was a pattern or any chatter, as it's called in signals intelligence, beforehand. Also, afterwards, Malcolm, no one is claiming credit, which is very unusual and irregular. Now we have two young men who are asked their suspects, unknown suspects, which of course suggests a team, Malcolm. That eliminates the one possibility of a lone wolf operation we've talked about. For example, Faisal Shahzad in 2010, the Times Square. Lone wolf operation, American citizen, some training in Pakistan, came back here and operated on his own, which makes it a lot easier for him to go very far in his operation because he's not coordinating, he's not speaking, he's not on cell phones. Also, a man named Abdo, a private in the Army, in 2011 had a pressure cooker, explosives in his apartment, and Inspire magazine, the Al-Qaeda magazine that shows you how to build a bomb. Also a lone wolf operation. He was eventually found out by the FBI. He's now in jail for the rest of his life. This is clearly no longer a lone operation, which suggests, Malcolm, something else the State of Israel and the police force and the IDF has experience with. The bombers, the Shahid bombers, the martyr bombers, always were delivered by teams. Right. They were brought in, they were placed on a certain corner, and then they attacked. Yes.
And also, those who are expected to bomb and to leave, not the suicide bombers necessarily. But I just want to comment on this thing about lone wolf. It's a mistake. Because inevitably we find out that there's some cleric, that there was some training, there was some indoctrination in a prison, there was some place where they were incited. So lone wolf makes it sound as some guy cooks this up on his own and all of a sudden decides to do it. It's not so, and we have to go after the sources, and whether it's online instructions to prepare these kind of bombs, whether it's government support, those who aid and abet them, we have to go after all of it if we want to stop it. Otherwise, we just cut off a finger and leave the rest of the body to carry out the rest of the attacks ongoing.
We're in New York, and it's an opportunity to speak to the rest of the country and the people who are listening overseas, Malcolm. Commissioner Kelly has made New York the hardest target there is. We have not had a successful follow-on attack since the original 9/11. That is not an accident.
It's great intelligence. It's foresight. Look how he was criticized at times by people for it, and even on some of the methodologies. Those are essential today if you want to prevent this kind of horrific act. And it's not because people don't want to do it in New York. We've had cases where people have been arrested and preempted and prevented from doing it. And I think Commissioner Kelly deserves so much credit. So do the members of the police force and the city and state for giving the money that enables them to do it. It's very expensive, but it's essential.
Malcolm Hoenlein, Conference of Presidents, Major American Jewish Organizations. You will continue with me later in the program. We have much to attend in the Middle East right now. There's a manhunt. I'm John Batchelor.